So we've got one more talk before lunch. And yeah, this is Donna Benjamin. I really like your last name. It's really good. Okay, cool. So Donna is the Executive Director of Creative Contingencies, who are an Australian company that specialise in custom web services, digital research and event management tools. She's passionate about and she's a passionate advocate, rather, of free and open source software, these solutions for small business and education. In the world of agile project management, we often hear this term user stories, but what exactly are they? How do they relate to websites? This session is going to outline a range of different approaches to understanding the requirements of a project and working with a team to bring those requirements and those stories to life within a browser. So, Donna Benjamin, thank you.
Thank you. Stories transform us. Stories connect us. Stories actually make us human. I'm going to talk about turning stories into websites. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Donna Benjamin. I run a small business called Creative Contingencies. And I've been using PHP since PHP 3, but not developing in it. That's kind of me. Who are you? I think someone else put their hands up before and asked if you were developers, and I think almost all of you put your hands up, so I'm going to assume that's the case. How many of you already work with an agile methodology? Hands up. Most? Who doesn't and has never used agile and has no idea what that means? A couple? Who's used user stories and uses them every day? About half, I think. Okay. So what is a user story? Some of you already know, and it follows a kind of common template. I want you to kind of nod vigorously if this looks very boring and familiar to you, okay? As a user, yes, ... I require ... Looking familiar so far? Anything surprising here? So I can ... As a user, and you should specify a little bit more than just being a user, perhaps as a, I don't know, give me an example, someone. As a what kind of a user?
Non-authenticated.
As a non-authenticated user, thank you very much. So we want to get a little bit more specific than just a user. So I can state the thing that I want for a reason. Now, people go looking for inspiration for user stories in all sorts of places, and I asked Twitter, and Twitter very graciously provided goat user stories, and I couldn't help but not put this in here because it's ridiculous and awesome and hilarious. As a goat, I want a purr programmer, keeping up the cat theme, an optimised cat perhaps, who can help me out so that the work gets done with multiple perspectives. Thank you, goat user stories. Perfect. But where do user stories come from? Workshops? Personally, my favourite. Great place to kind of get all the key people together in a room and ask them what it is they want. Work with them. Workshop it. Okay, people, let's workshop it. Okay, maybe not. But getting people together to actually articulate what it is they want and have an opportunity to tell their story. And for me, that's what's got lost in the general discussion about user stories, the telling of that story. Interviews is another common one. Actually get one-on-one with people. Take the information that you've gathered in other places and test it by actually getting in depth with people to ask them about their needs and understand what it is that they need built. So you get past that as a particular user, I want a thing so that I can. Well, then you've got the opportunity to go to them and say, why? Why do you want that thing? What are you going to do with that thing? Get more information, get richer information, but have that conversation. Surveys. Better way to validate a lot of data or a lot of users. Take the information that you've used and start to get quantitative results. You can turn them into really eye-catching graphs that kind of help you grok and visualise what that information is. But you need to get your questions from somewhere, and I hazard the guess that workshops and surveys are a good way of doing that. Get deeper, richer information, get broader information. There's a couple of other ones. Competitive analysis. Perhaps you don't have access to the users in question. So you kind of know what you want to build, but you don't know, so go look and see what other people are building in that space. And then there's this, which is kind of my opposite favourite to workshops. Just build it and ask them, does it do what you want? And iterate when they say it doesn't. Very agile, right? Just build it and iterate. Learn. So say you've got this great wealth of data. People have said what they want. Who's heard of this invest in relation to agile stories? 2 lonely hands. Okay, I was kind of not sure whether to put this in, so I'm glad I did, thank you. Sorry to bore the 2 of you who know this, but for everyone else, this is kind of fun. Invest is a way of thinking about your user stories and making them more digestible. The I stands for independent. Can story A stand alone from story B? Negotiable, and this comes back to that telling of the story. Can you discuss with the user what it is they want, what it is they need, what it is they think they want, what it is they don't need, but to negotiate with them about it. Perhaps it's too big, split it up, that you have a conversation about it and really get more into the nitty-gritty about what it is. Valuable. Does this story actually represent value? Whether that's business value, community value, is it going to generate income? Is it going to make our users happy? Whatever that value means in your world, does this story represent something valuable, or does it sound like something, oh, it just seemed like a good idea, but you can't test that it was actually useful in some way? Estimable. Can we estimate what's involved in building that story out? If it's not estimable, it's probably too big. So a good story should be estimable. It's a hard word to say, I had to practice. And small, nice, bite-sized, chewable chunks, digestible, small. And finally, testable. Can we test that the value we assume is there? Can we test that it works? Do we have tests? How would we test it? What does testing look like? So, invest. So I'll just quickly go back. I should have a finished slide. Invest. Independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Which brings us to teamwork. So we've gathered our requirements, we've broken them down into nice bite-sized chunks, and now we bring this beautifully groomed, perfect, utopian backlog. Does anyone live in that world? Anyone? One day. We bring that backlog to the team, and now we're in a place where we actually need to turn those stories into websites. And this is where teamwork is absolutely fundamentally what it takes to get it done. And I would like to put to you that it is the telling of those stories to each other which is the first step in doing that. Treating them as an opportunity to have a conversation, to understand what it was that that user, authenticated or not, has expressed what it is they want in a way we understand. That we estimate what's involved in doing that. And to do that, we need to understand the skills of our team, the way we work together. I mean, sure, I could probably build a very basic website all on my own, but if I'm doing anything more complex, I probably need a cross-skilled team, right? We probably have different skills and needs. And I can't remember who I was talking to at morning tea about bringing a front-end developer who, say, didn't know anything about Drupal together with, was Chris, where are you? Somewhere. Anyway, that you can actually work together and share what you know. You don't necessarily need to be expert across everything if you have a good cross-skilled team that's willing to work together. So teamwork is absolutely fundamental. estimating effort that's involved is going to depend on who's in your team, what they know, what they understand. Telling the stories to each other, understanding how each other works, builds this sense of shared understanding of what you're building. That you all have the same picture in your head about what's going to happen next. And you have a bit of a sense about who's going to do what and where their strengths lie. This comes from understanding each other. Understanding each other comes from having conversations, from telling stories. Are there any Welsh speakers in the room? Good, because I'm going to murder this word. I have no idea how to say it. I think it's Sinifin, possibly Kinefin. Anyone? Okay, I'm going to get away with that. What it means is habitat. And it's another one of these kind of frameworks. And in this case, it describes complexity or lack thereof. There's the obvious. And when you're looking at a story, some of these things are like, oh yeah, done that before, done it 10 times. Know exactly what's involved, it's obvious. Don't even need to think about it, can get in and write it. Complicated, this is a little bit more tricky. I'm not exactly sure. I know there's lots of bits, but I'm pretty confident I have all the stuff that I need. I've done bits of it like it before, I can very easily move on. More complicated. And then there's complex, which brings in more uncertainty, more moving parts, perhaps more integrations. It's less certain how to proceed. And then you've got my personal favourite, chaotic. No rules apply. We don't know. And this is actually, going back to what I said earlier, a good place for prototype and iterate, where you don't know, where the stories aren't clear, where the requirements are not set, where you've just got an idea and you want to test it. You're in this kind of chaotic space. Complex, complicated, chaotic, obvious. This is a really, really good way, if you're having a team conversation about sort of getting a little bit more sort of meta about the way you work together. I really recommend having a look at this framework and bringing it into your language. Has anyone here used it before, heard of it before? Okay, so take that away. I'll go all the way back. I can't say the word, so read it. See the letters, C-Y-N-E-F-I-N, Kinefin. It's really, really useful. I'm going to have to find a Welsh person to tell me how to say it. Okay, so what are we building? So have you got some sort of framework here, right? Kind of on the same page so far? I haven't said anything that's like sent you going, what is this crazy lady talking about? No? Okay, so far so good. I know I'm in between you and lunch too, so I'm sorry about that. So what are we building? I think it really helps to get concrete about what's involved, like what we're actually trying to do here. So I just came up with some, rough sort of ideas. So perhaps we're building a conference website. We're all at a conference, so we all have a shared understanding of what a conference website might be and do and look like. Or a media sharing website. Like perhaps we could talk about something like a YouTube or such, where we've all got a fairly common understanding about the things that are involved and the types of users who might interact with it. Or a research agency website, very specific needs, get quite concrete about what it is that's being built. We have, once we've decided on a website, personas, authenticated user, non-authenticated user, admin user. So I went with a conference website. I figured that was a pretty safe bet for a conference audience. As a potential delegate, I want to know the date of the conference so I can see if it suits my schedule this year. Anyone feel that may have been them at some point? General nodding. As a future speaker, I want to submit a talk proposal, so I might be invited to speak at this conference. That worked out well for me this time. There's a few other views, through a few others of you here too. As a conference organiser, there's less of you in the room. I need to review and evaluate talk proposals so we can create a good conference program. Sort of see that this is really bringing together that idea of where these user stories come from, zoning in particularly on the personas. So in Drupal and PHP, and I will admit, in a room full of Drupal developers in a room full of PHP people that I am a Drupal person, and just like PHP, people sometimes feel like the ugly cousins in some software and web development worlds. Drupal can sometimes feel like that too, so forgive me. Don't be too mean and throw rotten tomatoes. Anyway, I also wanted to sort of broaden it out more broadly about PHP, but my example is Drupal. Anonymous users, authenticated users, admin users. We have these ones out of the box, but more generally in PHP, your frameworks probably have similar things, access control lists, yada, yada, yada. You generally get the picture. It's not too scary, right? Oh, I've got some scared looking faces, I'm sorry. Okay, so in Drupal roles, out of the box, Drupal 8, anonymous user, authenticated user, administrator, no work to be done. I can easily get the 3 user stories I have shoehorned into those boxes, no trouble. I can add a role though if I need to do something more specific. Cool. This is the permissions list for those out-of-the-box users, in this case related to comments. My anonymous users really can't do much, my authenticated users can do a bit more, my admin user can do everything. So let's break it down to be a bit more specific and go from our user story to something more like, to use some jargon, our acceptance criteria. As a speaker with an accepted talk, I'm going to share my talk on social media so that people will come to see it. Thank you all for coming. Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done. Very good. So, social platform logos should appear on every talk page. Might be a way of addressing that need. Let's do a little bit of competitive analysis to see how other people might be doing that. So this is Lanyard. Is this kind of what we mean? Is this what our user wants? No, says someone. Clicking on each logo should pre-populate a post with the URL and the session details. Okay. Again, we'll stick with Lanyard. They do that. Is this kind of what we want? So let's say, keeping it simple, okay, yes, this will do. This is close enough. This is our acceptance criteria. So we want to get social with our site, and where do we go? Of course, you're all PHP developers, so you could write this code from scratch and do it perfectly and exactly how you would want, but I'm a Drupal person, so I just want a module. How do I choose the right one? There's tens of them. Fortunately, the Drupal Association have put together a resource guide on social media and Drupal. That's the header of that page. That's a screenshot of that entire page. It's a little bit ridiculous, just a little bit. Anyway, so then I went to a particular Drupal site and looked at some specific examples. These guys have got exactly what I want. They've got a bunch of logos related to that content. Cool. Let's have a little look under the hood. Ah, they're using the service links module. How cool. Off I go, grab to the service links module, does exactly what I want. I've seen it in action, bang, done. So, from stories to websites. Gather those requirements, however you do it. There are others. We just talked about workshops and surveys and interviews and competitive analysis and prototyping and iterating. Bring those stories together, make them digestible, bite-sized chunks that you can work on together, and understand your team and work as hard on your team as you do on your code by understanding each other and how each other works. And then bring that knowledge and understanding of what your users actually want together to build your websites. Stories are how you do that. People collaborate. The product evolves using stories. Got some references if you want them. The slides will go online. And I'm done. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we have time for questions. What I want to do is get a sense, would you rather rush out to lunch or are there a few questions? Hands up for lunch. No, it's not that many. Hands up for questions. There's a few of you. Okay, quick, some questions. Thank you very much. Not yet, probably will. Anyone else? Right over here.
So I love the really positive focus on these are great ways to run your user stories. What are sort of the cardinal sins of user stories that you see?
Meaningless ones. Like, don't bother having as a user, I need to log in. I mean, duh. Right? I think that's one of them, is try to get beyond this is just a task that needs to be done. I think that's not the point of user stories. However, you see them in backlogs because it's the only way you're being allowed to put, stuff that needs to be done in. So, yeah, don't try and transcend and elevate the user story in your practice if that's what you're seeing. Good question. Thanks, Jessica.
The pronunciation of Cinnabon should be Kenibin or Canibin.
Kinifin or Canifin?
Canibin. V-I-N.
V-I-N.
Kinevin.
Kinevin. All right, everybody say it with me. Kinevin.
Or Canivin.
Or Canivin. Okay, very good.
It's
We can
Google.
all practice this. Thank you very much. Was there one up the back there? Oh, there's one down the front to run.
Do you have any experiences with the user stories becoming a tyranny where user interaction drowns out internal customers, drowns out architectural constraints, drowns out maybe system requirements?
Direct problematic experience, no, but I am aware of it definitely being a problem, yes. One of the developments, I guess, in the user story discussion language going on around there is to get away from user stories and talk about job stories instead. That you still take all of that idea about having the conversation be important, but apply it to the job or the task that's being done as opposed to the user. And I actually like that a lot. I have a lot of sympathy for that. But I keep seeing in that, it still comes back to the persona involved in that task in some way. And so I think it's kind of just changing the focus rather than the big idea about talking about the person who's doing a thing, whether it's the developer, it may even be the business owner, whatever. We build stuff for people. We don't API developers, sorry, yes, you do build stuff for machines. That's fair. But on the whole, we're building stuff for people, and we shouldn't lose sight of who they are. And the people may be the dev team is drowning in technical debt. We need to put some tasks on our board which are about them. Does that help? I think one more. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Lunch. I think that's a good word. Thank you all so very much.